It is Tuesday, the 14th of September 2021, and as Notorious B.I.G. Biggie Smalls used to say, first things first. Let's have a look at the t-shirt. So that's today's Con Virus All Lies, another great one from Red Pill World. Big shout to Lorraine over there. Big thanks to everyone who took part in the mass meditation for 9/11 on Saturday just gone, marking the 20th anniversary of that fateful event. You know, there are many people who have commented that the reason we're going through all the shit that we currently are is because we collectively, as humanity, as a species, failed to heed the warning signs that were presented on September 11th, 2001 by the same demented, psychotic, freak, goon bastards that we've got presiding over every aspect of organised society. You know, that threat was clear and present and obvious in 2001, but we didn't put it down. And because we didn't put it down at the time, we're now having to deal with it in 2021. And, you know, that's a school of thought that's worth bearing in mind. It is what it is. But nevertheless, I just want to thank everyone for their participation in another great event. Evidently, from the feedback that I've got, many people have commented that the energy they felt through participating was palpable, and they really felt an energetic connection to everybody else that was taking part in this event. And it can't fail to have made a difference, as I always say at the end of these things. And what a special one that was. What a great opportunity to be able to put out positive intent and to will truth, freedom, justice, love into physical manifestation on a date that was used for such dark, evil, ritualistic means 20 years ago, and doubtless every year since by these dark occultists. So I really feel we've made a difference there. The next mass meditation, let's do it on the 10th of October. We'll get back to the regular routine, 10:10. And how about we do this one at 10 in the morning? You know, a lot of people have commented that these things don't have to be done in the evening, as the 6:6, 7:7 and 8:8 meditations were. And, you know, the great thing about the 10th of October is that it's a Sunday. Have you noticed that so many of these dates that we're selecting for these mass meditations turn out to be Sundays, when people aren't at work for the most part and actually have the time to take part? So this will be 10 a.m. on a Sunday, 10:10. Let's do another one of these and let's keep them going. I also want to thank everyone that came out for the great all-dayer in Birmingham on Friday just gone. This was an awesome event. It was put together by Martin Liedtke, who's a great guy. You know, he's a bit of a joker, a bit of a comic, but he's actually very smart as well. When you get past all the kind of extrovert larking around, you find that there's a very intelligent, very well-researched guy there who's got some incredible information to share. Mind-blowing presentation from allegedly Dave Murphy, who never disappoints. He always gets you thinking and presents often challenging and controversial information that can cause a bit of cognitive dissonance. But Dave did a great talk, and a big shout to everyone else that was involved and all the people who attended. It was standing room only towards the end. It's great to network with people. It was great to do a DJ set at the end of the day. So hopefully there'll be many more of these from Martin Liedtke and from many others. Getting into the main theme of today's video then, and I'm titling this, It's All About Perspectives. It's the observation that perceptions are everything, and what we experience in our reality is directly related to the way in which we perceive it into being and the perspective that we put on it. And to set the ball rolling here, I just want to revisit a comment that was made by Mark Passio last year. Now, Mark Passio has not been doing many broadcasts through the scamdemic. I think he's so disgusted and so disillusioned with the response of humanity at large to what's being done to it, in spite of the warnings that he's given over many, many years, painstakingly imploring humanity to wake up to truth and stand in right action and comprehend what rights and freedoms are and to defend them at all cost. He's just so nauseated by how the reaction has been during the scamdemic, in spite of all of that, that he can't actually bear to go on air. Or he feels that if he did, he would just fly into an uncontrollable rage every time he hit the record button. One sympathises. So he was talking last year about how if nobody ever turned on their television, if nobody ever turned on their radio, if nobody ever paid attention to so-called internet news sites, and if nobody ever bought and read so-called newspapers, nobody would have any idea that anything was different in society. They would get up in the morning, go about their business, and it would be business as usual. Nothing would be any different. The only reason people have been behaving in any kind of a different way is because the mainstream media has instructed them to do that. And he had a few words to say about those who are employed by the mainstream media. You know, these traitors, these treasonous vipers, spreading disinformation, spreading fear, getting everybody to behave in certain desired ways. I'll slip into my Mark Passio impersonation here the best I can. You're lying whores! You're lying whore traitors! You're lying for a paycheck, and dumb people believe you. And that's all that's really going on here. Ladies and gentlemen, get as offended as you like. Okay, that probably won't go down too well, but it is what it is. Gotta love Mark. So the point is that the mainstream media is the last line of defense that these sick, demented, freak, goon psychopaths have, that prevents the truth from getting through to the masses. It's a firewall that they use to block that off. And if that ever went, they would be completely finished. So the perceptions of people in everyday society are shaped through the weaponized media. That's the point here. And it can really make a difference. You know, during the early days of the scamdemic and at various points along the way, they've chosen to ramp up the fear factor. And they've really laid it on about mutant variants and case numbers and infections being through the roof and hospitalizations and all this. And it's really made a difference to how people behave in society. Not all people, of course, because they can't get us, or some of us are too smart to fall for that mind control and that propaganda. But unfortunately, the majority are still allowing themselves to be manipulated and puppeteered. And then at other times they might choose to tone it down a bit, such as we seem to have at the moment in England, where they're not really going all out on the hysteria regarding cases and mutant strains and all this. They've been talking about different things. You know, you can see this by looking at the headlines in the so-called newspapers each day as you go in the shop. There was a while back where it would be nothing other than Convid and the V agenda. Now they're talking about other things like sporting events and, you know, Brexit and God knows what else. And so they seem to have chosen to have toned it down a little bit. And they don't seem to be positioning for another full lockdown in England, at least. I know it might be different in Scotland, but talking specifically about England and to a large extent Wales, they don't seem to be subliminally drip feeding that fear and that paranoia into the public mindset to prepare people to get them ready for another full lockdown. I would have thought that if they were planning that for this autumn and winter, they would have started ramping up that fear factor already. And it leads me to think that they won't be going for another full lockdown this winter. And this will be down to, again, perceptions, the way that they have perceived the public mindset, the way they have perceived we collectively would react if they went for that measure. So the British public, or at least in England, aren't as malleable and aren't as susceptible to the fear propaganda as they were this time last year. And so in the same way that they try to control our perceptions, They also keep an eye on how we're reacting to things, and that shapes their perception of the situation. And this, I feel, is why we've seen a U-turn in the last few days on the question of vaccine passports domestically in the UK. Vaccine passports being used to gain entry to places like nightclubs, big sporting events, big music events, any kind of large indoor gathering. So there's been a lot of positioning ready for this in recent weeks, where it's looked as if the traitors were going to try to apply this. But they've since done a U-turn, and they've said that vaccine passports won't be happening this winter in the UK. And I feel that there would have been a lot of monitoring of the public mindset and public feeling, public sentiments that led to them coming to this conclusion, and probably the employment of AI algorithms to monitor social media posts, chat threads, YouTube comments, that kind of thing, and probably personal email correspondence as well. And this would have all fed back to them the perception, the perspective that if they went ahead with this now, it would backfire spectacularly on them, because there would be a lot of public dissent. There would actually be a lot of kickback, a lot of pushback. Hallelujah, at last, something that people are indicating that they're not having and they're pressing back on. So this would have been fed back to them, and I feel that's what's led to this U-turn. Obviously, there's still a lot of confusion marketing, so-called, going on regarding the proposed Ving of 12 to 15-year-olds in school. We're still getting the mixed messages there. We're still being told 1 minute that the JCVI does not recommend this, and so it's probably not going to go ahead. And the next minute, we hear that the government is completely ignoring that advice. They don't ignore the advice of SAGE on anything, but seemingly they can choose to reject what the JCVI is recommending, and they plan to go right ahead with the Ving of 12 to 15-year-olds in schools. Anyway, that's another hurdle that we must overcome. That's another matter for another day. But just thinking about the vaccine passport specifically here, I feel that public feedback will have shaped their decision on this one. So just imagine how a young person who went out and took the V, they didn't really want to, but they really loved clubbing and they wanted to be sure that they could get into nightclubs, or maybe they're a live music fan, they wanted to go and see some bands, and they thought the only way I'm going to get into the concert venue is if I go out and take the V. Imagine if they've done that and now they learn that it wasn't needed after all, and they'll still be able to get into one of these places. Imagine how duped you're going to feel. It's the same as these people that went out and took the V, again, against their better judgment, but just because they wanted to go on holiday this year. They desperately wanted their 2 weeks in Alicante or, Zante or whatever it was. So they went out and took the V, and then they were told that actually you didn't need it after all, and you're still going to have to test and trace and do the test and quarantine on your arrival back in the UK, depending on what the location is. Imagine again how pissed off you'd feel at having fallen for that one. But, that's the true nature of these people. They're liars, they're frauds, they're criminals, they're thieves, they're murderers, they're paedophiles, and they're Satanists. Real talk. Let's just get down to the true nature of these people that we're trained to look up to and take orders from. That's what they are at their core. Why are you going to expect any kind of different behaviour from them? Why are you going to trust them? And going back to the V passports thing, I think we collectively need to be grateful that we've had a victory here, because I feel that's what it is. I feel that without the public dissent, without that clear indication that we've sent out, that we as a community are not going to be putting up with this, has prevented it from coming in. So let's be grateful for that, and let's allow ourselves to be happy with the odd victory that we appear to have. And of course the naysayers, the doom mongers, have come out of the woodwork on this one, and a lot of truthers are saying, oh well, you can't trust them, they'll be up to something, there'll be some ulterior motive here, they've only delayed it and they're just going to try and bring it in further down the line. This always happens whenever there's any vaguely positive, uplifting news. There's always somebody to come along to piss on that parade. A lot of truthers, it seems, are addicted to doom and gloom. They just love telling everybody else how terrible things are and predicting how much worse they're going to get. They want to take the kudos and the credit for being the one that told you how much worse your and your family's lives are going to get. That's not the way I want to live. We're back to perceptions and perspectives here. You know, if you walk around being pissed off and under a doom-laden cloud, a black cloud hanging over your head the whole day, it's going to shape the kind of experiences that you attract towards yourself during that day. It's energetic connections, it's vibrational frequencies that you synchronize with. If you're in that negative, down, black, dark space, you're going to get negative, down, black, dark experiences as a result of that. Have you noticed, if you're having a bright, positive day, if you do wake up one morning and everything's feeling good and something great might have happened in your life, you might have had some positive news, and that can really colour the way that you experience the whole of the rest of the day. You seem to attract towards yourself bright, positive, light experiences rather than the dark, gloomy ones. So all these people just putting a doom-laden perspective on everything and saying, oh yeah, well, you know, it seems to be good news, but it's only shielding something else that's going to come out tomorrow. Their whole lives are just going to be gloomy and dread-filled in that way. And I've had enough of that. You know, I've had those days, I've had those times, I've had those experiences. I don't want to dwell and wallow in that. It does nobody any favours too. And collectively, if we're going to put this tyranny down, we need to stay in that high vibrational state together as a community. We get nowhere if we're just in that negative, gloomy position the whole time. I mean, this is great news, isn't it? This is what so many of us have said we want. The scrapping of the V passports, because they're outrageous and they just cannot be allowed in any way. So we've sent a clear message that it's not going to be as easy as they might have thought to get these things through. And the next time they try and push it, because yeah, I accept that it may be a temporary measure, and further down the line they're going to try some sneaky, sly way of getting them back in. But as and when they do, they're going to encounter more pushback and more resistance, because we've shown already that we don't like the idea of these things. Even normies seem to be pushing back on this. Even normies seem to be able to see that this is an outrageous imposition on our rights and freedoms. So that's great. Anything that gets normies on side has to be welcomed, right? So let's welcome this one. We'll see where it goes. But for now, we need to allow ourselves to be happy that we've scored a small victory, because we need to take all the victories we can take at this time. Let's step to the mailbag. I've got some feedback on various matters that I feel is worth me communicating. So the first one is from Royston. I don't normally give out names, but he wanted me to give him a shout. And also he wanted a shout to his mum, who's out there in Utah. And he said they can't see each other, but she apparently follows me on YouTube. So many thanks to that. And a big shout to Royston's mum. Let's see what he has to say. He wrote, I felt the need to drop you a few lines to convey an inner knowing that this beast of an agenda and all the shadowy aspects of this enslavement machine are crumbling. And I would be inclined to agree with that for what it's worth. It may not happen in our lifetime, but what I'm hearing via interviews and podcasts like yours are voices echoing this sentiment. They've drastically overplayed their hand. Yes, they have. And there's a very real air of desperation to the school ground bully mentality. They are severely out of balance. Yes, the shit will continue to be flung. This poison will still infect humanity, but people are waking up. A shift in consciousness is what they are so afraid of. Even at a base level, people can see that the lunatics have taken over the asylum. So yeah, I'd pretty much go along with that, and I've made a few of those points already myself. Next correspondence, this individual has written, everything in this life is transient, even we are, this body and this mind. We have to accept that. The good news is that there is something permanent deep inside us, which is consciousness, our true nature. Never forget that everything will pass. As George Harrison said in his song, All Things Must Pass. Even this convid theatre, along with all the media and the politicians, and one day we will be one happy human family. Working on it. We have to go through some rough times. We are. But we are strong and we will survive. Yes, we will. Transurfing is a great book. The author explains energy pendulums. For example, big companies, mainstream media, but also the alternative ones, and that we should not feed them with our energy, either with our positive attention or with anger or rage. I know it's difficult to be indifferent when you see all this evil, but it's great to be free from all this bullshit. What I also find very interesting is Paul Levy's book, Dispelling Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil. Wetiko is a mind virus, some kind of evil force, a parasite of the mind, according to Native Americans. Levy is a great researcher of Jung's work. Carl Jung would say that we're going through mass psychosis, just like it was during world wars and periods of witch hunting through history. Look at the people. Many are still possessed by fear and completely blind, but some of us are going through a process of awakening, and that's the good news. Next piece from the mailbag. The deep state have ramped up their smear campaign against us. Here's a media report that anti-V fly posters on underground trains, ostensibly placed there by truth campaigners, have razor blades hidden behind them to slash the hands of any law-abiding person, or virtue signalling normie, trying to remove them. So this was a story that emerged a couple of weeks ago, I think, whereby, it's blatant propaganda. It's so obvious what's going on here. It is a smear campaign against those of us that are opposing the tyranny and that are trying to communicate this to other people. They're claiming that anti-V posters that are being put on the walls at underground stations have razor blades taped behind them, so anyone trying to rip them down gets their hand all cut up because, we're just evil, nasty, psychopathic, out of control maniacs that deserve locking up, us anti-Vers, us convid deniers. That's the hysteria that they're trying to whip up among unthinking normies. The story did break on the BBC, so what else would you expect? Anyway, continuing the letter, this is clearly fake. It looks like a vicious attempt to slander us. Yes, the RMT calls on normies to call TfL staff anytime they see anyone putting up any anti-V or muzzle or lockdown stickers. The deep state knows that no one in their right mind would actually bother calling TfL if putting up stickers wasn't a violent trick against them. I've seen this report in a number of mainstream media outlets. I've complained to the BBC, Sky and the RMT itself so far, asking them to supply evidence that it's truth protesters putting these razor blade primed fly posters up. That's if they even exist in the first place, and it's not a completely fabricated story. The next item from the mailbag was sent in before we got the news about vaccine passports reportedly being scrapped in England. But an item that was of great concern to this person goes, Cosmic Kids Yoga has a live performance coming up at the Henley Festival this month, September. Henley will be a cashless festival and will require a convid passport. Well, we'll see about that. When I saw this, I immediately sent a message to Cosmic Kids Yoga, letting them know I would no longer be purchasing any products from them or supporting them in any way if they continue to prop up convid pass festivals. I think more of us need to speak out in opposition to these festivals and any performers who support them. Some of the family-friendly ones may fly under the radar. So it's worth bearing in mind that even though the government have said that they won't be applying any kind of convid V passports themselves, some of these individual organisations and these festivals and these events may choose to take it upon themselves thinking they're, good citizens and good moral people, taking a stand against this virus and doing the right thing, they might feel that they're actually going to win public support by applying these things themselves in their deluded virtue signalling state. So it's quite possible we might encounter this stuff at individual events. And of course, the only appropriate response, as this individual writes, is to boycott these organisations completely. Put them out of business. Look at what happened in France from the videos that emerged last month, where there were attempts by the government there to introduce V-passports in bars and restaurants and these kind of things. The people in, I think it was Paris, but it's probably many other cities as well, were sitting outside these venues and eating picnics in the street as a way of saying, basically, fuck you. We don't need your restaurants. If you're going to apply this tyranny, we'll just eat our food out in the street, because we're prepared to go to those lengths to show you that we won't comply with this madness. And how many of these businesses would have panicked and very quickly done a U-turn on this if they were able to, and open their doors and invite these people back in to eat? That's what we need to be doing here, sending a very clear message to any organisation that's trying to introduce these things that we just won't support it. You want to try and drop that on us? Well, you're going to go out of business. Good luck. Good luck paying your bills. More of that needs to happen. There was a mention there of Henley-on-Thames, and just as an aside here, a by the by, I had a bit of a Mandela effect moment the other day, it seems. I was doing some research for my upcoming book on Culture Club, and I remembered their 1983 hit single Karma Chameleon. The video to it was shot on the river at Henley-on-Thames. I remember very clearly this was the case. There's an island in the River Thames very close to Henley, and parts of the video were shot there. You've got this like steamer boat from the American South, and they'd kind of recreated that scene in Henley for this video. I remember the story, I've read it many times. That's where it took place. Now, if you look up the video to Karma Chameleon on Wikipedia or anywhere else, every other source online, it will tell you that those scenes with the riverboat were filmed in Weybridge, Surrey, on the Thames in Weybridge. This was not the case. I clearly remember that it was Henley. I did a post about this the other day. A couple of people piped up and said, no, it was always Weybridge, but many others said, yeah, I remember it being Henley as well. So I'll be interested in other people's feedback on this. How many other people remember hearing that video was filmed in Henley? And this might seem quite trivial. It might seem like it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it does, because there are many other examples of the so-called Mandela effect. I think that's a bad name for the phenomenon myself. But, it seems every person you speak to has some kind of false memory now related to this concept. So it is important, if our reality is changing, or if the history books are being rewritten and things that we remember are being scrubbed and replaced by something else, I think that's cause for concern. There's something going on here, whether it's a metaphysical supernatural effect or whether it's occurring at human hands. So I'll be interested in people's feedback on that one. A few announcements. This coming Friday, the 17th of September, I'm looking forward to DJing alongside Danny Rampling. Pure legend in the game, very celebrated name in DJing circles, and I've been DJing for over 30 years now in total. This will be the first time I've ever played a gig alongside Danny Rampling. So this is happening in London this Friday. It's a bit of a party on the down low, bit of a best kept secret if you get me. So for those in the know that know where this thing is occurring, I'll see you there. Other than that, like I say, it's kind of on the down low, but looking forward to it anyway. Also, this coming weekend on Saturday and Sunday, it's the Uprise and Shine conference that I've mentioned before. It's happening near East Grinstead in East Sussex. Many speakers talking about personal sovereignty, natural health, all the lies and deceptions we're fed by the mainstream media, that kind of thing. I'm going to be doing a talk there on the Saturday, another DJ set on the Saturday evening, lots of other great speakers there as well. Dave Murphy's going to be in attendance again, Sandy Adams, and so many other people as well. Big shout to Karen organising that one. Looking forward to seeing many people at that conference. Then a quick mention for Saturday, the 25th of September, there's another Freedom Rally March happening in London, and I am due to be DJing at the after party to this one. Open air, I believe, in one of the parks. I've still yet to get full information of that. Hopefully it's going to happen this time. So look forward to seeing people in London for another one of those. But what I wanted to mention about the 25th is that there's going to be another big freedom rally happening in Newcastle. Now, I shared a couple of videos back what happened recently with the outrageous, unacceptable thuggery of the so-called police, unleashing violence indiscriminately on peaceful protesters. It was absolutely outrageous. You know, I had a lot to say about that a couple of videos back. So on the 25th, I feel our brothers and sisters in Newcastle that are going to be out there on the streets, possibly risking their personal safety, protesting against the tyranny and demanding the restoration of rights and freedoms, need as much support from the rest of us in other parts of the country as possible. And what I would like to see happen is, instead of everyone heading to London, which is the natural choice for many, I'd like to see people jumping in their cars, jumping in minibuses, jumping on trains, whatever, and heading to Newcastle and taking to the streets there. Because there were only a few hundred people at that last event, evidently. But imagine at this one, if there were several thousand, many tens of thousands, even into the hundreds of thousands, all standing in solidarity with each other. Imagine what a different scenario that would present to the police. A little bit more difficult to unleash the violence on a crowd of that number, don't you think? So I would like to campaign for as many people as possible, if they can, if they're able, on Saturday the 25th, to get up to Newcastle and stand shoulder to shoulder with our Geordie friends and make that statement in that particular city at that time. They're not going to be able to take them on quite so easily if that occurs. I don't have the full details of where this is taking place, but, you know, keep an eye on the social media, keep an eye on Telegram. I'm sure that will get released in due course. Catch you next time. Thanks for listening.